Welcome, everyone. Please let me know in the chat if you're able to hear me. Thank you for joining me this evening. And please introduce yourself in the chat if you haven't done that yet. Let us know where in the world you're watching from. I'm Jennifer Zundel, a certified conscious uncoupling coach. And conscious uncoupling is based on the New York Times best-selling book titled Conscious Uncoupling, written by my mentor, Catherine Woodward Thomas, a licensed marriage and family therapist. And I've been working directly with her for over 10 years, and I'm one of her coaches certified to guide you through this process. Thank you for letting me know you can hear me well in the chat. Very good. So you may have heard of conscious uncoupling back in 2014 when Gwyneth Paltrow announced that she was conscious uncoupling from her former husband, Chris Martin, the lead singer of Coldplay. What they were speaking about in that announcement was this process that I'm going to be sharing with you tonight. This program will support you to end a relationship in a healthy way for everyone involved so that you can heal your heart, reclaim your power, and create your own happily even after life. I encourage you to silence your phones, close the other windows on your computer, and just sit and listen here to what I'm going to be sharing with you because your heart matters. Your desire for happy relationships matter. And so this conversation tonight is the perfect place to be, whether the breakup or divorce just happened, whether you're still in the process of deciding whether to continue in this relationship or not, or it's the perfect place to be if the breakup happened many years ago and you've just been struggling to let it go and move forward in your life. Or maybe you've experienced a different kind of loss, and this conversation can still support you through other kinds of losses as well. In all of these situations, you might be experiencing big, overwhelming emotions as you're ending a relationship. And you might be unsure of how to move forward and get to the other side and be happy again. Maybe you're worried about your future or your children's future. You might be wondering how to support yourself and your children so that you can move forward in the best way possible for everyone involved. No matter whether you're the one who's leaving or you're the one being left, most people who are going through the ending of a relationship tend to experience some version of these types of things. So we're going to talk tonight about how to support yourself during this time so that you can feel empowered as you go through this process. And I'd like to share a little bit more about myself and how I became a conscious uncoupling coach. I started with Catherine Woodward Thomas as one of her Calling in the One coaches. That's the other program created by Catherine, and it supports singles to manifest love. And through my own personal journey with that program, and through supporting many clients who were longing to find a partner, I saw that sometimes we enter into relationships with someone we truly believe is the one, and we imagine that it will last a lifetime, only to later feel deeply disappointed when it doesn't work out. And I can relate to that kind of disappointment myself. And I can also relate to staying too long in a relationship, trying to make it work, feeling frustrated and confused about whether to stay or leave, wondering if there's something that you could do to change it differently or make it work out. And I can relate to being devastated at the end of a relationship when it didn't work out and feeling like maybe it was just easier to be alone rather than risk that kind of heartache again. All of these are ways that we get stuck in the past during a breakup, and they cause us to close our hearts and become defended against creating something wonderful in our future. So we have to be mindful of how we're showing up and relating to what's happening right now during a breakup. And this is what led me to become a conscious uncoupling coach, because it doesn't have to be this way. We don't have to stay stuck and close our hearts or live in fear of the future about how divorce might affect our children even. And it doesn't have to be this way because conscious uncoupling can support you to move through the heartbreak and return to a sense of wholeness so that you can move forward and create the happiness and love that you truly desire, both in your life and in your relationships. So let me give you a quick overview of what we're going to do tonight. We're going to look at the common current approach to breakups and divorce that our society generally follows. And we'll talk about three common mistakes people tend to make during a breakup and what to do differently. And I'll give you an overview of the five-step conscious uncoupling process. And I'll share with you one simple yet powerful practice you can begin using immediately, especially if you're experiencing big, overwhelming emotions. And while I'm sharing tonight, if you feel yourself that you would love more personal support for yourself to go deeper into the process with guidance, stay on until the end. And I'll tell you a little bit more about how you can work with me privately through conscious uncoupling coaching for yourself. And as well, you can post your questions in the chat as I'm sharing, and I'll stay on and answer them at the end. So let me know in the chat right now if this sounds like it would support you. It really does help me to see your feedback so that I can know how you're resonating with what I'm sharing. And I see people are still introducing themselves. Wonderful. Thank you for that. I love seeing your feedback in the comments here for me. All right, so first, let's take a moment to see and notice how people tend to experience a breakup. It's completely normal to feel big, overwhelming emotions, to feel like everything is falling apart. Through the ending of a relationship, it can feel as if your partner has betrayed or abandoned you. And sometimes it's not just your partner you feel abandoned by, but life itself may have feel like it's abandoned you. Everything that you thought you could count on is suddenly gone, and that can easily cause you to close your heart moving forwards. It's understandable. The emotions and disappointment of a breakup can be intense and overwhelming, and we might even compare the breakup to a car crash. Some crashes are very minor, maybe just a fender bender, and that might be the equivalent of dating someone that you were very hopeful about for a few weeks, only to have it not work out. And even though it's minor, it might feel like it's leaving you very shaken and disappointed and hesitant to open your heart again. On the other extreme, some breakups can feel like a hit and run that came out of nowhere and left you broken and alone, like your whole world has been totaled. And that might be the equivalent of discovering that your partner had a secret life. Maybe they were married to someone else and they were hiding it. And that's very devastating. Or maybe it felt like you found out that they were draining your retirement accounts the entire time. And of course, that would be shocking. And of course, there are experiences between these two extremes. But no matter where you fall on the spectrum, you need support in order to heal. Whether you're dealing with a fender bender that's left you disappointed and discouraged about love, or you've experienced a hit and run that's left you in emotional intensive care, you deserve help. And that care allows you to fully recover. Think about it. If you were in a car accident and you ended up in the hospital with a broken leg, of course you'd get medical care. You wouldn't just try to heal it by yourself at home. You'd get appropriate support, right? And it's the same thing here. Only in this case, your heart is the part of you that's broken. And your heart deserves the same kind of expert care and attention so that you're not left walking around with an emotional limp for the rest of your life. The truth is that healing is possible. And when you do the work consciously, it doesn't just transform your own life, but it profoundly benefits everyone around you. Research shows, especially children, actually tend to do much better than most people imagine during a divorce. What matters most is how the parents relate to each other and how they relate to the children during the breakup. That's what shapes how the children interpret and respond to what's happening. So it's incredibly important to be mindful of how we're showing up and the energy that we bring, the messages that we're giving our children during a divorce. I'd like to share with you the story of Chelsea, one of my former clients who went through conscious uncoupling with me. And she has a daughter, and she was very worried about how the divorce would affect her. And here's what Chelsea shared in her follow-up with me. My daughter is thriving, and I'm proud of how my former partner and I have handled the hiccups of co-parenting. I'm still dating the new man I met earlier this year, and our relationship has been slow but steady, which is different than how I have been with men in the past. And this is a good thing. And I'm buying a business. Later this month, I close on the store I've worked at for the last several years. I'm thrilled to own my own business. And all of this is a result of the work that I did with you. Thank you for helping me grow out of the destructive past patterns and into the more confident woman I am now. Isn't that beautiful what Chelsea shared? This process can truly transform how you show up in every area of your life. Just like Chelsea, you can move beyond the heartbreak and create the life and love that you desire and even the future that you desire, and feel more confident to take stretches like that. And your children can thrive right alongside you. The reality here is that breakup is actually an opportunity for you. The emotional pain you may be feeling right now is an invitation. It's an opening to discover and transform something that we call your source fracture story in the Conscious Uncoupling program. Your source fracture story is the original wound, something that may have happened as you were growing up in your family or in response to an early experience in your childhood. It's a story that you've likely been living inside of for a long time, and it's been influencing your sense of self, your sense of worth, your expectations in love, and the kinds of relationships that you've attracted into your life. And so the pain that you're feeling right now, the heartbreak, the loss, the disappointments, it's probably not the first time that you have felt something like this. It's likely part of a larger pattern that's been repeating throughout your life, a pattern of people leaving you, not being there for you, not respecting you, not listening, and not caring about your feelings and needs. And these are just some of the ways our early wounds can continue to show up in our relationships. And that's why this breakup can actually become one of the greatest opportunities you've had in your life. Because now you have the chance to finally bring healing to some deeply held parts of yourself that you've been carrying around this pain in for years. And this moment is your chance to liberate yourself from those old patterns so that you don't need to keep repeating them in the future. This can be the moment that you begin to step into your full potential to create the kind of relationship and the kind of life that you truly desire. Before we go deeper, I'd like to give a little context into why this is so important. Current statistics show that 50% of first marriages end in divorce, and over 60% of second marriages, and more than 70% of third marriages end in divorce. And so while divorce and breakups are common, our society still tends to view the ending of a relationship as a failure. And so it's time to evolve the way that we see what a breakup and a divorce actually means. Sometimes we come to the end of a relationship and realize it's simply not growing anymore. It's not serving us anymore. That we've reached the end, the natural completion of what's possible together. And when that happens, it's not about blaming or shaming ourselves or the other person. It's about learning how to have a healthy breakup, one that allows both people to heal and move towards greater awareness and greater happiness going forwards. Because when we do this, it sets us up for our next relationship to be even better. As Catherine Woodward Thomas says, your next relationship doesn't begin when you meet your next person. It begins with how you end this one. And so any unhealed pain or resentment that we carry shows up again in our next relationship. But when you consciously complete this one, then the growth, peace, and clarity that you gain, the skills that you gain here through this process will actually become the foundation for greater levels of love in your next relationship. And the truth is, as a society, we just haven't known how to do this. We haven't known how to have a healthy completion that supports everyone to thrive and move forward to greater levels of happiness. We haven't known how to help children feel secure through this transition. We haven't known how to evolve the patterns that have caused the pain in the first place, or how to trust ourselves to create something different and healthier moving forwards. And so today I'm going to be sharing with you some guidance about how you can begin doing exactly this, how to start creating a healthy breakup that supports you to heal, grow, and thrive in love again. Now, I'd like to talk about 3 typical mistakes that people make during a breakup. Mistake number 1 is going from soulmate to soul hate. It's so easy to start devaluing the relationship that you had, to speak badly about your former partner, or even hate them. And in some ways, there's a good reason that people do this. They're trying to come to terms with the loss, On an unconscious level, it's an attempt to break the emotional attachment with their partner. In fact, the emotional withdrawal that we feel after a breakup can feel a lot like the withdrawal from addictions, from drug, from alcohol, because the same hormones are being triggered in your body. Everything feels out of balance and out of control, and it can be incredibly disorienting and unregulated. We know we need to break that attachment with the former partner, but we don't know how. And so unconsciously, we think that hating the other person will stop the pain. But in reality, it does more harm than good because it blocks real healing from happening. And it causes us to lose trust in ourselves, in our own hearts. Our hearts close down and we become unavailable for happiness or new love. And when that happens, we end up stunting our own growth, preventing ourselves from creating new love and a fulfilling life with a relationship with someone that we truly desire. Mistake number two is we blame our partner. It's easy to blame our partner. And yes, they may have done some hurtful things. But if we're truly honest, we also had a part in what happened. When we only blame the other person, we give our power away to create anything different in our future. And yet, most of us really do want to understand what our part is, but we often go about it by blaming or shaming ourselves. And that doesn't lead to growth either. And so we need to learn to self reflect in a new way, in a way that brings real insight and power. So ask yourself here, what can I learn from this experience? What was my part in creating this dynamic? What can I take responsibility for so that I can make new choices, better choices, healthier choices next time? This kind of self-reflection is really responsible, not self-blaming. It's about owning our part in a compassionate way, in an empowering way, taking responsibility for what's ours, but not taking responsibility for what's not ours. Taking self-responsibility might look like acknowledging when you ignored your intuition or red flags, noticing where you gave your power away or didn't set boundaries, seeing where you overfunctioned because you really wanted it to work. Maybe you've even seen some of these behaviors as good, like being generous, for example, or putting others first. But we really need to ask ourselves, what was motivating me to give in that kind of way? Was it an attempt to prove your value or trying to get them to love you back? Because when we give from that place, we actually set ourselves up to be disappointed and taken for granted. These may seem like small things, but they shape the tone of the entire relationship. And until we see this clearly, we can't fully trust ourselves to create something healthier next time. So let's take some time to look at how we can unconsciously do things how we can consciously do things differently. How did we unconsciously set things up? How did we even bait the other person to play out our story with us? Because as we said earlier, these patterns likely go way back. Seeing them clearly now allows us to realign with who we truly are and finally create the kind of relationship that we do want in our future. Let's talk about mistake number three. Mistake number three is thinking that time heals everything. The reality is that time doesn't heal everything. Like I mentioned earlier, if you had a broken leg and you didn't see a doctor, it wouldn't heal properly. Most of us wouldn't just stay home, hoping that it would get better on its own. Yet with heart pain, many people try to do exactly that. They distract themselves, they wait it out, but they hope the pain will eventually just pass. But it doesn't work like that. Just as you need x-rays and a cast and physical therapy for a broken leg, the heart also needs proper care and support in order to properly heal. You can't just simply self-medicate or ignore it. And when we don't do the work, the energy of that relationship carries forward into the next one. Our hearts remain defeated and defended. Patterns continue, and we show up as a diminished version of ourselves. We fail to fully own our power, and we dampen down who we truly are, and we struggle to be authentic in future relationships. I'm curious as I'm sharing here if any of you can relate to what I've been sharing here about the common mistakes that we all tend to make in a breakup. Let me know in the chat. So I'd like to now share with you what you can do instead of making these mistakes. Let's do a high-level overview of the 5 steps of the conscious uncoupling process. Step 1 is to find emotional freedom. It's very normal, as I mentioned earlier, for overwhelming emotions, anger, sadness, disappointment, feelings of betrayal, to feel like they're in charge of you. And instead, the goal here is to harness the emotional energy so that it's contained and you feel safe, rather than letting it overwhelm you or cause behavior that you don't even recognize in yourself. We're not ignoring these feelings. We acknowledge them, but we also need to learn to channel them constructively because emotions can be the energy of transformation. So Beverly, a former client from the program, shared the following. Since doing the conscious uncoupling program, the anger and resentment are gone. All the pain from everything is gone. That's the kind of transformation that this program can create. And I'd like to guide you here briefly through a practice that can help you contain the big, overwhelming emotions safely. And it's called the inner sanctuary of safety, combined with a Buddhist practice called Tonglen. And this practice is designed to create a sense of safety, even with intense feelings. It's a closed eyes practice because we'll be connecting with your own internal space. And so, if you're in a space where it's safe to do so, I invite you to close your eyes now and put everything to one side, taking a deep breath and breathing as if you could breathe all the way down to your hips and down to your feet. Just letting your body relax into the chair that's supporting you. Scanning your body, noticing all the feelings and sensations that are there right now. Now I invite you to imagine your most powerful self, the part of you that is very wise, resourceful, resilient, capable, strong, the part of you that shows up when other people need help. Call that energy back from that self that's the strongest self, that part of you that is calm and wise and clear. And allow that energy to fill your entire body, to fill your entire body, even extending out to the edges of the room so that you're truly grounded, anchored, and taking up space in your home. Now I invite you to imagine another part of you coming to sit down next to you. And let's call this other part of you your feeling self. And so turning towards that feeling self as a separate self, but extending care and compassion and presence for what that other feeling self is going through right now. And so asking the following question and listening with deep receptivity. What are you feeling right now? And letting them name one emotion. I'm feeling. And coming back to this wiser self and mirror back. I can see that you're feeling, and name that emotion again. And then asking, what else are you feeling? And letting them name one more emotion. I'm feeling. And coming back to the higher self and mirroring back, I can see that you're feeling, naming that emotion again. And you might even validate that feeling and say, I get it. It makes so much sense to me that you feel that way. And what else are you feeling? And so let them name one more emotion. I'm feeling. Coming back to this higher self and mirroring back, I can see that you're feeling. And now on the next in-breath, imagine that you could breathe that feeling right into your heart. So you're turning towards it rather than trying to get away from it. And you're letting it transform in your heart. And on the out breath, imagine that you're floating above the world and you can see everyone in the world in this very minute who feels this exact same way for the very same reason that you do. And imagine that you could send out a blessing to all of those people and include yourself in that blessing. And on the next in-breath, breathing in another emotion that you named, letting it transform in your heart. And on the out-breath, breathing out a blessing to everyone in the world who feels that exact same way for the very same reason that you do, including yourself in that blessing. And on the next in-breath, breathing in the third emotion that you named, letting it transform in your heart. And on the out-breath, imagining breathing out a blessing to everyone in the world who feels that exact same way in this very minute, including yourself in that blessing. And now coming back to extend your presence and your listening and your care to the feeling self sitting next to you and asking them, what do you need right now, sweetheart? And letting them name one need. I need. And coming back to this wiser self and mirror back. I can see that you need, and name that need again. And you might even say, of course you need that. I get it. And what else do you need? And let them name one more need. I need. And coming back to this wiser self and mirroring back, I can see that you need. Naming that need again. And what else do you need? Naming one more need. I need. And coming back to this higher self and mirroring back, I can see that you need. Naming that need again. And now letting this feeling self, the other self, know how much you care about them and that you're here for them anytime they need someone to listen, anytime they're going through something difficult. They can count on you. And now doing whatever you need to do to complete this interaction and opening your eyes and coming back to the call with us. So how was that experience for you? I would love for anyone to put that in the chat, how that experience of this practice was for you. It's a powerful practice, very moving. Oftentimes it's even moving for me to lead it for clients. And as you're putting your thoughts and your shares in the chat, I'm going to move on to step 2. Step 2 is reclaim your power and your life. This step is essential because as long as you're feeling victimized in your interactions with your former partner, you're still at their effect. And to reclaim your power, we need to focus on what our part was in the relationship dynamic. Even if 97% of what happened was clearly your partner's responsibility, maybe they had an affair, for example, all you need to focus on is your part, your 3%, your contribution to what happened. And that's where transformation happens. We start by getting very clear on our choices and what motivated those choices. Maybe we overgave to prove our value and our worthiness, or trying to get our partner to step up. These are common codependent dynamics, and owning them is how we reclaim our power. Once we see what our part was, we can make amends, first to ourselves, acknowledging and taking responsibility for our actions, practicing self-forgiveness. And if our choices hurt our partner, maybe we even need to make amends to them as part of our own healing as well. A participant in the Conscious Uncoupling program shared the following: "This is one of the best decisions I've ever made in my life. I finally see my part in the relationship dynamics, can take full responsibility, and now have the tools to create the relationship I do want with a future partner." That's exactly what this step is going to set you up for: clarity, responsibility, and empowerment. And so as you see your part, we also really want to check in: what motivated those choices? Were you trying to prove your value or your worthiness? Were you seeking love through your actions? Were you trying to get love back and get them to love you back? Were you trying to get them to step up for the relationship? Seeing this clearly helps you break old patterns and step into a more empowered way of relating. And these are all examples of your source fracture story. Step 3 is about transforming it, transforming that source fracture story at the root so that we can be solid in our own value and worthiness. We don't need a partner to respond to us in a certain way or to validate us or to make us feel worthy. And that liberation comes when we let go of these codependent dynamics of letting other people validate our worth. That probably is not the first time that this pattern has happened for you. Many of these patterns have been lifelong, often starting in childhood, where we hoped that someone would finally meet our needs and be there for us and heal us. And the reality, though, is that we have to heal ourselves first. We need to look clearly at the story that we've been living inside of and how it shaped our choices and the meaning that we assigned it. For example, if we felt that we had to prove our worthiness to our partner, the truth is that we are the decider of our own value. We are independent of anyone else's responses or actions or choices. Our value is so, and that's just the way it is. We don't need a partner to validate our worth. Let me share an example of my client, Susan. She was going through a divorce and struggling with depression, barely able to get out of bed. She had been married to a man in the military, and so they were moving frequently around the world, and she was always prioritizing her husband and her children over herself. In fact, it felt like to her, she couldn't even have any dreams or desires for herself. She had to just focus on prioritizing everyone else. So when we got to step 3, I guided her through a 7-step process to see her source fracture story clearly, to name it clearly and see very clearly how had been causing her to show up in the relationship through her actions, her choices, and her behaviors that were then creating the reality of the relationship. So when we explored her source fracture story, Susan realized that she unconsciously believed, "I'm a mistake and I'm not supposed to be here. And I can't take anything good from anyone else in my life because they are supposed to be here. And so I can't take anything away from them." Wow, that's profound, right? That we were able to name that for her and see what it was causing her to do. Now, this belief, although I'm calling it a belief, it doesn't live in our mind, the source fracture story. Instead, it lives at the energetic level of our being, in our body, which is why it then feels like it's just the way things are for us. That's just the way my life is. That's just the way this relationship is. That's just the way people treat me. That's just the way things are for me, is the way the source fracture story feels when we're living inside of it in our body. It feels like that's just the way we have to behave. That's the way we've always behaved. Those are the kinds of choices and actions that we always do in our relationships. Sometimes, even when we know better, we still end up showing up in those ways. So with Susan, we were able to trace this belief back to her childhood as a baby because her mother had been really afraid to hold her and love her. She was overwhelmed with love for Susan, and so she really didn't know how to be a mother. And so she kept herself at a distance from Susan. And Susan interpreted that distance as meaning that she was inherently unworthy. And that unconscious story then was shaping her entire life because it's what caused her to choose an unavailable man. It's what caused her to not speak up for herself, to sacrifice her needs, her feelings, her dreams, her desires. And it was the root of making everyone else a priority, but never making herself a priority. It was the root of her ongoing lifelong depression. Who wouldn't be depressed if they thought they were a mistake? I'd be depressed too, right? So this was what the pattern that she was experiencing and generating, because this is what we're doing. We're generating these experiences unconsciously through our own life, through our own unconscious belief system. And we're for the most part, unaware of how we're doing it. And yet Susan was doing this, and it was stemming from this unconscious belief of I'm a mistake. This one conversation that she had with me in step 3 liberated her from that, because through the 7-step process that I guided her through, we were able to clearly name that source fracture story, and we were able to see what it was causing her to do in her relationships that was then creating more of what she didn't want in the relationships. Right? It was causing her husband to not be available. It was causing her husband to not even listen to her, to not even notice that she was there. And so from that place, we were then able to shift her into seeing a deeper truth. If it's not true that she was a mistake, then what really is true for her? What's really true is that she's a blessing and she can give and receive love freely. It goes both ways. And she needs to hold that space for herself, that she's a blessing in all of her relationships. So we were then able to see if she's truly centered in that deeper truth, how would she behave differently in her relationships naturally? How would she make different choices, take different actions if she truly believed that she was a blessing? So this is not a mindset shift that we're talking about here. And it's not just a behavioral shift. It's actually a combination of getting really rooted in our value and seeing how, when we're not rooted in our value, what does that cause us to do in our actions, choices, and our behaviors? So this is very practical, hands-on, something that we're talking about here, this 7-step process. It's not just a woo-woo practice. It's not just a spiritual woo-woo practice, although I love those things too. But this is more practical than that, right? So we were able to clearly see what Susan would do differently through her actions, her choices, and her behaviors that would change her relationships. So Susan came back the next week, having had a heart-to-heart talk with her mother for the first time ever in her life. And her mother actually listened for the first time ever, as if what Susan was sharing actually mattered. And Susan was shocked, right? Because this one conversation that got her centered in her true worthiness and her true value allowed her to go and show up differently in her relationships. And from that place, people responded differently to her. That's what's possible here, is when we truly are centered in our value, the people in our lives will respond to us differently. Many clients report that weeks in this program, a few weeks in this program, because that's all we're talking about here, is more helpful than years of therapy because it transforms how they show up in relationships. Another example is Jody, who is a therapist herself. In fact, many therapists come to me as well. So Jody said, before working with Jennifer, therapy wasn't helping me with my breakup. I struggled with my emotions and what the breakup meant. Jennifer helped me take a deep dive into my source fracture story, uncovering false beliefs and creating powerful truth statements. I now feel strong, resilient, and capable of knowing the truth of who I am. And I can't imagine being where I am now without the conscious uncoupling coaching I did with Jennifer. These stories show how transforming your source fracture story can completely shift your relationships and your sense of self and your life. I'd like to talk about step 4. Step 4 is about becoming a love alchemist. Now, moving on to step 4, once we've seen what's been happening in our past and we've cleared some of the patterns and we've seen very clearly how we've been contributing to those patterns, now we're liberated, right? Now we actually have choices and we can see clearly how we might create a different future. And so step 4 is about getting very, very clear about what is the future that you want. What is the future you want to take a stand for having? And how can you start to show up differently in your life to create that future? What is the vision of your life that you want to take a stand for now? Whether it's finding a future love or learning how to co-parent in a healthy way with your former partner and be great parents for your children together, even though you're no longer married. Or maybe even there's some of you who might be still in the midst of a relationship deciding whether to stay or leave. And sometimes there are ways that we can consciously recouple and still come back to that relationship and make it work this time. So, no matter what your vision is for the future, step 4 is about leaning into this possibility. How can we be a generator of the love that we desire in a way that is very powerful? Who will we be in response to what's been happening so far in our relationships? Now that we're aware of our unconscious patterns, we have choices and we can decide how to show up in our lives now. Now that we know what the choice points were, now that we know, oh, I need to learn this skill, right? This is a very practical program, like I said, that we can see very clearly and map out through this 7-step process how the source fracture story was causing us to do things that weren't in our best interest. And now, what are we going to do differently instead when we're truly centered in our value? From that point, we might see, oh, I just need to learn some skills in this one area for things to go better, right? This is where it becomes very practical. So, for example, Heather from the UK, one of my former clients, said, I feel so freed from the dynamics of my past relationship. I can see my part in what happened and how I can do things differently in my relationships. Jennifer is a wonderful coach, kind, thorough, and supportive, picking up the fine details that would help me feel like a different woman. So, step 4 is about consciously choosing your future, consciously choosing your future and creating the relationships that you truly want and stepping fully into your power to do that. Step 5 is about creating your happily even after life. Now, we look at the new agreements that we want to create in our lives, the ways that we want to show up moving forwards. And at the same time, we need to acknowledge that there are some old agreements, maybe that we weren't even aware of, unconscious agreements that were unspoken. And those types of agreements might be with a former partner, they might be with ourselves. We might have said them out loud. We might not have said them out loud, but we have to become aware of what they are because they're probably keeping us stuck and creating some problems for us. So we have to see what they are, name them clearly, and then renegotiate them so that we create new agreements that do work for us and do support our vision for what we want to create going forwards. Now, we want to see how can we create these new agreements that will bring more cohesion and health for everyone involved, especially children if you have children. And we also want to consider others at this point in the program, others that might be affected by the breakup. So, for example, family, friends, your broader community, other people that were involved in your relationship as well. And we want to be honoring of everyone here, not forcing them to take sides in the aftermath of a breakup. So this step is about honoring yourself, your former partner, and everyone and the time that you spent together. that relationship was meaningful, and we don't need to devalue it just because we're letting go of it. Just because it's no longer continuing doesn't mean that it didn't mean anything. Instead, we can bless each other's lives as we move forward free and liberated and open to attracting a like-minded partner in the future. By consciously ending this relationship, we set ourselves up for healthier, happier connections in the future. Now, you've seen how the five-step conscious uncoupling process works. You might be noticing the difference between what's possible when you have guidance and support versus trying to navigate a breakup on your own. The truth is that going through a breakup without guidance often leaves us repeating old patterns, staying stuck in heartache longer than necessary, or carrying unresolved pain into your next relationship. But when you're guided through the process, step by step, personally supported, you can truly transform your patterns, reclaim your power, and create the life and the love that you desire. And so I want to acknowledge that some of you here are single and ready to set yourself up to find a great partner. I know many people in my community fall into that group that are single, ready for a great relationship. And others may be looking to improve a current relationship through the conscious recoupling way of doing this program. And others may be going through the ending of a relationship or the ending of a marriage, going through a breakup. No matter where you're at, having a personal guide can accelerate your growth and help you navigate the challenges with clarity, help you see your blind spots that you're not seeing on your own. And this is what really helps you create lasting results and really catapults you into greater levels of happiness than you thought possible. I have a current openings for a few private clients who are ready to receive this kind of high-level one-on-one support. People who are serious about fully stepping into their future and breaking free from patterns that no longer serve them. And if that's you, I'd love to offer you a free consultation to see if with me would be a good fit. These consultations are really reserved for people who are ready to invest in themselves if we determine that it's a right match. And because you've joined this webinar, I'm offering 10% off of my coaching packages if you sign up before October 15th. So that's next Wednesday. And so this is your opportunity to get guided, personalized support to heal, grow, and move forwards. Whether that's finding your next loving relationship or creating a healthy, thriving partnership right now, or just supporting you through the ending of this relationship in a way that truly feels supportive of your healing. I'm going to put a link to my calendar into the comments box here, where those of you who want to schedule a consultation with me can do so. And remember that I'm offering 10% off of my coaching packages for those who sign up for coaching with me before next Wednesday. So I want to give everyone a chance to put some questions into the chat. So do go ahead and type anything that you've been wondering about into the chat, and I'll stay on a few minutes to answer as many as I can. And while you're doing that, I'm going to scroll through the chat and see what things might have already been put here into the chat that maybe I can respond to. Let's see. Um, so it sounds like, Aldo, you can relate to making all three mistakes. You're not the only one. You're in good company, I'm sure. And Amber, you overgave to try to prove your value. And again, you're not the only one. I'm sure people here can relate to you. And Jeanette, you're dealing with self-forgiveness. My heart goes out to you with that practice. And yet, it's good to know that you are no longer trying to prove your value in relationships. That's wonderful progress, Jeanette. And you're also clear, it sounds like, what your next area to focus on is valuing yourself. So it's good to have that clarity here. Let's see. So Lindsay, you were excited to hear what to do instead of the three mistakes. So Lindsay, I would love to hear what you felt most empowered by regarding what to do instead. Lindsay, the meditation helped you figure out what you need. Yes, that's important to be very clear on what we need. Mm, mm. So, Jeanette, so you're struggling to name your needs and comforting and validating yourself. So, in my coaching, I do offer some ways to get more clarity about naming your needs. And I would encourage you to do this practice that we did tonight here regularly, even daily, because it does take some practice to get really comfortable and able to name the needs, name your needs, and to validate yourself and to comfort and hold space for what you're feeling. It does take regular practice. And you share that you recently told your mom about a traumatic experience from college, and it seemed like she wasn't as caring, it sounds like, as you were hoping that she would be. And that's unfortunate. And I hear that it's you've been trying to let go of her voice. And so it's time for you to step up. I see that you're apologizing for your long comment. There's no need to apologize for that. Thank you for sharing, Jeanette. I love it when people take the initiative to share freely in the chat during these group calls. You're setting an example for others because I'm sure others have things to share here too, and they're a little worried about sharing in the group. Thank you for sharing. I'm sure that you're not the only one here that is struggling to let go of somebody else's voice that's been influencing you. You're not the only one here. I can promise you that, that's struggling with that. And so, again, it's good that you're recognizing the growing edge that you have right now. The next area to focus on is to let go of your mom's voice and to really reclaim your own voice, to be the decider of your own value rather than letting someone else decide your value or decide what you're allowed to say and what you're not allowed to say, what you're allowed to share and what you're not allowed to share. Those types of things, right? And so I encourage you to work more with the practice that we did here tonight. So while you are thinking of some questions to ask me about the material I shared tonight about conscious uncoupling or about coaching that I offer, I want to share with you some common questions that people ask regarding conscious uncoupling. Many people ask, does my partner need to do this too? My former partner. And the answer to that is no. Conscious uncoupling is about your personal healing. You don't need your partner to participate. This program really supports you personally to move through heartache, release your patterns in your relationships, and regain a sense of wholeness, regain a sense of self-power. And that comes from you. It doesn't come from a partner. A partner doesn't give you permission to reclaim your power and your worthiness. A partner doesn't give you permission to let go of those patterns. You do. And that's what you and I would be talking about is how to set yourself up for that, how to liberate yourself from your old patterns, right? So that you're free to create the life and the love that you desire, regardless of what a former partner does. All right. So, another question I often get is what if we haven't yet decided whether to end the relationship yet? So, again, this program is still incredibly valuable and it helps you clarify your heart. It helps you understand your patterns and how you've been contributing to what's been happening in that relationship. It helps you make empowered choices, whether that means staying and consciously improving the relationship or letting go of each other in a way that honors both you and your partner and sets you up to create something better going forwards. So, no matter what that choice is, right? A lot of people come to me deciding whether to stay or leave the relationship. And no matter where you're at with that journey, you're going to gain a lot of clarity and confidence to know what's right for you and how to respond to what's happening. Another question I often get is when is the best time to do this program? So the best time is whenever you need the support, right? So if you're feeling challenged or overwhelmed, or you notice patterns that are blocking you or sabotaging you or preventing you from creating healthy relationships, then it's the right time. If you're going through a divorce, then ideally the right time or the best time would be to do this program, the conscious uncoupling program, before you divide assets. And the reason for that is because these conversations are going to center you in your own value, in your own worthiness, and they're going to help you return to a sense of power, a sense of peace, a sense of confidence, self-esteem, calm, clarity, and all of that is going to help you go through the process with your former partner in a way that is going to be healthier for everybody. And it's going to help those conversations where you're dividing assets go better because you're not approaching those conversations from a perspective of needing your partner to pay for something in the sense like he did me wrong, he's got to pay, or I need to get him back for cheating, or I need to, get him to validate that I'm hurting or something like that, right? So without being calm, centered in your value, we might tend to approach those conversations in a way that's not very healthy. And so we want to set that conversation up, all of those conversations to go as well as they can. And so then it would be ideal to do this program before going through those conversations. So I am looking again for any questions that people have put into the chat for me, and I'm not seeing any. And so I want to let you know that those of you signed up for our conversation this evening, you'll be added to my email list, and I look forward to staying connected with you and having you in my community. And if today's webinar has opened up something in you, if something has shifted for you, or you have felt like there is something important here for me, if you're ready to heal old patterns, reclaim your power, and create your own happier, healthier relationships moving forwards, then I want to invite you to schedule a Find Your Way Forward consultation with me. This is your opportunity to explore your situation and see how the coaching program might be a good fit for you and determine if we're a good fit to work together. And so a reminder that I'm offering 10% off of my coaching packages until next Wednesday. And so you can go to my calendar. I'll just put that link into the comments box one more time so that you can schedule a consultation with me. And I look forward to having you in my community going forwards. All right, I see one more comment here that I'm going to look at from Amber. During the practice tonight, the feelings you felt were sad, lonely, and lost and heartbroken. I get it. And what came up for you was that you need a hug, you need to be loved, and to know that you'll be okay. Yes. And you also think that your inner child or your feelings needs reassurance. Your inner self needs reassurance that everything will be okay. The practice helped you tap into the pain, and that was helpful. Thank you so much for sharing that, Amber. Thank you, everyone, for being here with me this evening. It's been an honor to share this information with you, and I look forward to connecting with you again very soon. Bye for now.